Hi, welcome to Haven. This is a podcast that's a safe space for curiosity and conversation. I'm your host, Haven, and today I'm curious about what does it look like to affair-proof your marriage? What does it look like to affair-proof your marriage? So if you're listening to this in the morning, good morning. Hefty topic to go into, but one that I think is really important to explore. So I'm going to have my guest come right out of the gate for this one. It is the person that I'm co-protecting our marriage from an affair with, my husband, Aaron.
Hello. It's great to be here.
This is solidarity.
Yeah. It's unity.
Unity. We got this. So affair-proofing our marriage. We haven't had affairs.
No.
Why
but
is
how
that?
would you like to begin talking about this very easy subject?
Okay, I want to talk about it. We've been married for almost 12 years now.
Yes.
And I remember the concept of hearing about affairs was we knew of a couple when we were in high school. And they had worked together and lines got blurred. And I remember being pretty scandalized. And I was like, yikes, like you both share the same faith with your respective partners. Your partners seem awesome. I just remember that was my first closest experience with, wow, even people that I look up to can slip into this. And I was really surprised. Also, our pastors at the time, they have an incredible marriage, and they would share a lot about what that looks like. And so then I think I went to the extreme of like, it can happen to anyone, and being like very scared it would happen to me. Like I would be the one to have an affair because it can happen to anyone. Lines get blurred. And what it makes me think of is when I was in driver's ed, there was an instructor teaching us about the course. And he shared one time like this really gruesome story about how he was driving with a passenger and teaching him how to drive. And they went under a bridge and someone jumped off the bridge and landed on their car. And I remember being like, that is the scariest thing I've ever heard. And now to this day, anytime I go under a bridge, I feel a little tense, but it's because it was his fear and his experience. It's not like it was an implanted fear. And so I felt like I had to work against an implanted fear of this can happen. It can really wreck everything. But I don't think I should remove it entirely because there's some degree of like a healthy fear to it of how can we be cognizant? How can we put up guardrails and not like bury our heads in the sand when it comes to the topic?
The fear is a good thing in some ways because you should have some fear of danger. Like it lets you know, it's an indicator of something dangerous is ahead. Or if I go this way, that's detrimental to my marriage. You know, that sort of thing. But at the same time, like you said about the horrible thing about the driver's ed story is it's like, don't think about ostriches. And then what do you think of? Ostriches. There's like when it's the antithesis, when you start saying like, don't do this, it's like a negative way of going about it. Truly negative in the sense that it's being so anti something that you're actually thinking about it all the time, you know, where what would be a better focus in that case? Like focusing on the thriving of your marriage and how to care for your partner, you know, how to share your needs, like work on the positive end of it rather than like, we got to be careful, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think there's offensive.
Fear mongering, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's offensive and defensive kind of strategies when it comes to that. Which one do you want to start, offense or defensive?
Defense.
Okay. So for us in our marriage, if the line, say, is here of crossing a physical, emotional, even spiritual boundary with someone, we have our boundary like 7 steps away from that in practical ways so that it doesn't ever get close towing the line. And so I think we've never written these down, but I think it's certain of like when people would say, oh, that's my work wife, my work husband, like that always gives me the ick. Like that feels so strange to use. Like only one person gets the term of my husband and it's you. And it's not this like camaraderie of I have a life at home and then a life at work. I think a lot of it too is like bringing unity into everything that you're in and not having different pieces where I'm sharing a piece of me with someone else that I haven't shared with you, or I don't have your permission to share with them.
True. Yeah. You don't want to have like hidden pockets, really. Like it's so much more vulnerable being completely open with you, but it does save me a lot of heartache at the same time, because you are such a light in my life. And the moment I open myself up to you, share about something, even if I'm a little ashamed of it, or if, I'm feeling just, it's hard to open up about something, if there's a little bit of friction, it's always better than hiding it, or the times when, you keep things secret.
Another defensive move is you don't become blind when you're married. Like, I don't expect you to not see an attractive woman and think, oh, she's beautiful. Or for me to see some different type of man and not admit that. I think you have to accept your own humanity of you can't be superhuman. I think it would feel better to have this insane ironclad fence around it and never have any other desires outside. But I think it's bringing that to you, where we have a thing of if it feels like there was a second look, or in mine as an emotional case, a second thought, recurring back to it, we tell each other about it. And it's proven for some kind of awkward conversations, but I'm always grateful to know that, okay, this person you feel a little chemistry with, you feel a prick with, I'm so glad you told me, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think just being a little open about it. It's hard because it's not comfortable to talk about these kind of things, or I'm being a human, and you start to get on this path maybe of, oh, I just am gonna hold on to this. I'm just gonna make sure I don't do anything wrong, and then you're, without really consciously knowing it, diverting part of your thought process just to yourself or to away from your spouse maybe. And where really you could share about hey, I was feeling this way, they gave me this compliment and it made me feel like $1 million, and it gave me butterflies in my stomach, and I don't really know what to deal, really how to deal with it. But I just wanted you to know that there's this dynamic now, and obviously it's not indicating that you would act on it or anything like that, but I assume the best in you and believe the best in you because we have created this channel of just honesty and not hiding things.
And maybe someone listening is like, I could never tell my spouse that. They would just ream into me and feel so hurt and make me feel awful about that. What would you say to someone listening who would say that?
If there's that dynamic and it's really heavy, I would say first and foremost, book some time with a good marriage counselor, someone who can be a third party and begin to excavate some of these things. Because chances are, if that dynamic exists in your relationship now, there might be other things that you either are or are unaware of. Just the whole dynamic of that, it can be kind of diffusing a bomb. Maybe you don't want it to really explode, but there is a way to go about it in a safe place, a safe space to share about how you're feeling with your spouse that would not set in a major explosion. I think that for me, that's the fear I would always have is this is going to blow everything up. This is going to ruin our life, or this is going to break Haven's heart if I share this. But in having that place to do that, it actually brought us so much closer together. I see how much you love me, how much I love you. It's not, we make it out bigger in our minds maybe than it should be sometimes. Whatever vulnerable thing you're trying to share. But especially in this context, I think that's really important to have a third party.
Yeah. And I think bringing it to the light with your spouse is the first step of just acknowledging it. And then I think it's also excavating of what is this? Is this a need that I have that's not being met? Is it, what am I drawn to here? And there's a couple different scenarios it can be. One of them I think about is I was watching the Masterclass series with the F1 driver, Lewis Hamilton. And I had this check and I was like, am I lingering too hard on this this person or these thoughts. And I remember I had brought it up before, not this instance, but something like this with our marriage counselor. And he was like, okay, well, what is it about that person that had a lingering thought before about? And I was like, they're really driven. I was like, they're really strong. They're at the top of their field. I was like, really confident, like charismatic, and they know what they want. And our counselor was like, oh, so they're like you. And I was like, maybe. And he was like, you're drawn to the attributes about yourself in this other person. He's like, you like that. And then what I realized too is sometimes, so Aaron brings different things to the relationship. If I'm not feeling seen, I can feel lingering thoughts about someone who's like me because I'm like, oh, you'll get me because you are me. Like we won't have any conflict here because we're the same. And that can be one of the reasons of like, why is it going that way? Or I think also if there's something, when you were touring a lot, that's when that other instance had come up. And I was like, I feel like I don't have this emotional connection.
Because I'm gone, like I'm away from you.
Yeah, you're gone. And when we're in person, it's great. But especially when you have a lot going on, it was hard. And so I think if you're starving emotionally, if you're near like a hamburger, you're going to be like, that hamburger smells great. I'm starving, you know? Or if you're so desperate, then like a can of beans, like something you would never be interested in otherwise, that's present and there is going to be a danger. So I think it's also looking at me of like, what is my hunger? What is my need? What do I have that is either not being fulfilled by my marriage or being fulfilled by what I can find in myself here? And looking at it that way, don't put all this shame of like, oh, it's this person or it's this instance. It's what is this telling me about myself? What is something that I can kind of excavate, bring my spouse into, bring a therapist into, and see how should I address this? You know, I think it also tells us a lot about ourselves because when you're satisfied, you could be around like filet mignon and be like, oh, looks nice and keep going. But when you have an unmet need, that's also when you're in the most dangerous territory to slip up out of desperation.
I think what you said is really important, but also very complex because you have the dynamic where if I agree, it seems like commonly with how people who would step into an affair or be tempted in that environment is when there's someone similar to them, you know, like that resonance. It's almost like, the more I think about it, it seems like it's not often that someone would enter an affair because of their spouse. It's probably because of something within them most of the time. Like there's something missing. There's a need or a brokenness really that gets expressed in that way. You know, they think that will be the thing that brings excitement or something about life that they're not getting. Where yeah, what you said, it just made me think about there's the attraction maybe to someone who's similar to yourself. And then you have the dynamic of it's because there's something missing in you. So it's really like on your side of the court a lot. Mm-hmm. Like you have to do some work to like, is it just self-confidence maybe that would help that? Maybe not. But I think with this dynamic of just the one possibility of that resonance with someone who is a lot like you, what are the boundaries there, I guess?
So we've kind of adjusted even some of our boundaries because for a while it was like, let's not ride in cars with someone of the opposite sex. Let's not have any type of meetings. And then with me, at least with my company, I was like, it's just not possible. Like it's really difficult. I do have to take these work meetings, but we always talk about it. It's always very public. We have access. We share the same phone password. Like we don't snoop, but you can look up anytime. We have each other's Instagram account logins on our phones. Like you have access to everything and we talk about it. And if there was ever an instance you were uncomfortable with, we would adjust. But I think it's also what are the boundaries that we have of like, I'm not going to text someone like a male, something super emotional and super vulnerable and intimate.
Thank you. I think that's very healthy.
I'm talking about like the defensive things. They have to be that specific and practical.
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
like
yeah, because I think that for a time early on, we were like very strict about things and just wanting to protect, partially because I think I'm sort of an idiot when it comes to like I don't know if anybody's flirting with me. I don't know.
You have no clue when you're getting hit on.
It's just like foreign to me. I'm just like, hello, you know, like I don't really know. Did I flirt with you? Like, how did this happen? But like,
I actually don't think you did. I think we were friends, and I think I fell in love with you.
What a beautiful story. Anyway.
No, I think I fell in love with you. I wouldn't say it was like strong game. Sorry, that came out so harsh.
Yeah, well,
I fell in love with your soul.
Oh, thank you.
And I find you attractive, but I mean, like, I wouldn't say it was, you never came on to me and was like, let's go out on a date. You said, hey, I like you, and I want to pursue this.
Made it known. Anyway, back on
slow burn from friendship.
So.
I really threw you.
So anyway.
You can't tell when someone's hitting on you.
Oh, yeah, I can't even tell what the subject is right now. Okay. So. But where were we going with that?
It's your thought. I don't know.
So like I can't. I have a problem processing that when people are. I just think people are being friendly or whatever. But that would cause some red flags for you because you're like, this girl is hitting on my husband or my boyfriend or whatever we were at the time. And like
there was one girl who would hang out with you and send pictures like, look, I'm hanging out with Aaron to me, and it was so annoying. And I was like, that's my boyfriend.
Great, Haven knows. But then like,
you were like awesome.
And you're like,
she had such a major crush on you.
I had no idea, or I don't still to this day have any idea what that even means. But with that, we had some boundaries that we would create with people. You know, we just thought like, I want to make you comfortable. Like, it doesn't matter anything to me. You know, like I'm happy inconveniencing anyone else if it makes you feel better. Like, and you've given me so much trust, and we've built on that, you know, as we've grown in our relationship. And, but at the same time, I think we do have really intentional boundaries with people, like one-on-one or whatever, not who like the perception of anything from the outside, like any other people, but like, just so that, you know, like I'm taking care of this. Like I'm creating that boundary because I want to take care of what we have.
Right. And I think it's preparing in advance and not waiting in the moment, like preparing of what am I going to say? Because especially in LA, like I get hit on all the time. I was trying to send Litos a voice memo last week about these episodes, and I had to pause it because someone was hitting on me. And the line I always say though is I used to be like, no, like I'm married. But then to me that feels like there would be an option if I wasn't. So now I'm like, oh, like I'm happily married. Like, I'm very happily married. So that's also, I feel like the language matters of being like, what would I say if someone's going to hit on me? You know, and what do I say when I'm in this scenario? And what are you comfortable with happening?
You want to talk about Helicopter Man?
Helicopter Man. Yeah, that one's an interesting one. Okay. I was at a networking event with like, I don't want to name the group because I think it'd be breaking the law. It's like presidents and C-suite executives. And we were standing in a circle. It was me and these different men. And one of the CEOs was like saying, oh, well, I have an MBA. Do you guys know what that is? And we were all thinking like, yeah, definitely.
Business degree.
Business degree. Definitely no. And he goes, no, that means I'm married but available. And then he looked at me directly in the eye. I was like, so if you're ever interested. And I was like, I don't have an MBA, so no. And then he just like kind of went about it. And I was like, what? The audacity of someone saying that to someone in a group setting, but also just in general. It was so bizarre. But why'd you want me to bring that up?
I just thought it was crazy, the audacity of that. But like, there's a person who just is so blasé, you know, about things in life and doesn't really know the destructive nature of it.
And it has to be up to us to have the boundaries. I can't expect anyone else to have boundaries. I need to be the one to enforce the specific things of what I need to do to protect our marriage. Because I think it's going a little into the offensive of like, my relationship with you is sacred. It means more to me than just anything. And I want to protect it at all costs. And I'm not going to ignore humanity, and I'm going to bring it to you and everything. But at the same time, it's not because, oh, I don't want to slip up, I don't want to mess up. It's, no, this is so precious. I would never want to throw it away for something so trivial. Like, this to me is like what we've built. It's like trust is built in drops, but lost in buckets. It's so not worth ruining this beautiful thing, even if we're having tough times, or we're not connecting emotionally, or you are touring, or even that, like, I'm missing an emotional need, you miss a physical need when you're touring, and that's pretty difficult too. How do you work around that when we're physically separated?
It's called offense. Just go into like heavy overtime.
I don't know
when we're in town. You asked.
It's true. Yes, that is true.
But I think one big boundary I have in my mind, I don't know if I've ever actually told you this, but part of how I think about it is, again, when I think of the guy who hit on you and said the whole NBA thing, I'm like disgusted. And I remember how disgusted you were when you were like kind of telling me about it. Like, this guy, like, this is crazy. And I remember thinking, like, that made a big impact on you at the time. That was just like, you're not beyond ick,
I felt a power imbalance too. I felt like I couldn't be as sharp or as
like,
shocked
could you have
back.
shot him down with something that I don't have an NBA? Like, I'm like, where's the Haven? Like,
I know. I wish I would have
pistol,
said,
like,
yeah, like, that's
thing.
so wildly inappropriate. Or I wish I could have, but I felt a power imbalance in that moment.
But that dynamic is something that I'm very aware of, and I'm very cautious of with interacting with people. Like, people, like women, I guess you would say, women would not be like maybe as comfortable with me because I put up this boundary, because I don't want to seem like I'm trying to do anything with anyone. Like, I see the dynamic, that power dynamic, and how uncomfortable that made you, and countless other people that have had that experience, and just thought that this would be a bad thing to do to someone, to even lead them on or flirt with them in that way, or whatever it may be. Like, I'm talking like the very basic, like how someone might start to flirt with someone. Like, I don't even want to do that, like, at the risk of seeming like a jerk or something. Sometimes, I'm very friendly. I'm overcomplicating this whole thing, but I sense the dynamic of, if I were to make a choice and cheat on you with someone, it wouldn't just hurt you, it would damage the person that I would be engaging in that act with. Like, there's that much at stake. And I think that is, I don't think that in me I can be that careless about someone to, like, to me it's an abuse, like, it's not you're not really giving them what they want either. Like, you see it, there's so many movies that have played out that scenario where, like, it's just chaos, overall, and no one's really, like, happy or satisfied, with it.
Yeah, and I think it's, even as what you were talking about of, like, the defense and the boundaries. I think also sometimes having really, really, really intense boundaries feels like you're also over-sexualizing everyone else. Like, oh, I can't even be standing near you.
Like, what's your problem, dude?
Yeah, like, that also gets really weird of, like, oh, I can't trust myself to do, like, to have a conversation with you, or, like, that also feels weird. Or I know this in, like, the faith spaces, like, women being like, why, I need help from a pastor, why won't they pray for me? Why can't I talk to them? Like, why did they, like, dodge me, or, like, make it really short, and I feel like a weird boundary up? And I understand, like, pastors need to protect themselves, and men need to, but also at the same time, sometimes really intense boundaries as a woman, I'll say this from my side, all of a sudden makes it feel like you can't even trust yourself around me to talk about something in general, or, like, some other kind of topic. Like, what is this? Like, my own presence is just so sexual for you?
That comes back to me to the idea you said about, like, being unified, and I would call it like integration. Like, you to have the integrity to not go there to be structurally sound inside in your choices, in your boundaries, in your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to have a conversation without worrying about yourself making some horrible choice. If that's part of the equation, the fear of those kind of things, it's like, take some time, maybe away, or, to work on that. Talk to someone,
Mm-hmm.
about that, because you can't do it alone. Even if that dynamic is present in your life and you're feeling that like there's these little fractures or whatever it is, you would benefit a lot from talking to a therapist or a counselor or someone you look up to, a mentor. I don't know. I never think of family because my family's like all over the place, but I'm like, oh, family member,
Mm-hmm.
talk to your dad, talk to your mom, someone who who's together, who is making it, and share about the struggle of that. Because chances are everyone deals with some level of this,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think for me, like what I have to be aware of is like my own brokenness is where it could seep in. And so where are the broken parts of me that I've seen? And so I think for me, it is like if I'm not feeling the emotional connection or appreciation, someone else's like compliments will stick too long. And I feel like you're like very grand, very generous there. But when life happens and if we're not connecting, I feel a susceptibility and I have to own that as my own responsibility and knowing this is something where that can seep in if I'm not proactively, intentionally connecting with you and saying, hey, can you send me a text of the things you love about me right now? Like, that's what I need. Can you, like, when we go on our date, like, I just would love the most, like, flirty, spin me around, grab my butt, whatever. Like, I want this, and saying and inviting you in and saying, I have this need and I want you to be the one to meet it for me.
for me, I think I'm susceptible in like I said before, a little bit about the power dynamic, like being in a leadership role now and having other young women around me. I just have to be very cautious, not that, like you said, the person who's like hyper freaking out about any interaction with someone. I'm not on that level, but I do put up boundaries to protect what we have, and I think most of the time, whatever's going on with me would be like deeply internal, some need or some abandonment, issues for me, like where I feel very lonely is where I start to get very tempted, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and just I, and it, again, it's the same thing, like times where I'm away from you for a long time, or if just we haven't connected, like we may be together, but like you go to bed at 8 a.m., 8 p.m., you go to bed super early,
Uh-huh.
and like then I'm just wired and like, what am I doing? And then if I start to feel lonely, it's like, oh, I don't like this. And I want to continue to like push for time with you to to be able to satisfy that. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah.
just help that, just realizing really, oh, I'm not alone. Like she's got my back and she's with me. Like you have such um, a way, even when we're far away physically. Like I may be in another state or country or whatever it is, and you really do a good job of keeping us connected. And I think the times over the last, like, I don't know, like 5 years, especially when I was traveling a lot, like you you have helped me like develop that strength too, where like you're saying you're doing it, you're reaching out, you're texting, whatever, and I'm like distracted by wherever I'm at or whatever's going on. It's very hard for me to like think outside of just the present sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
um and but working on that, um I think has made a big difference in the times when I'm physically away from you feeling lonely. And then, when we are here, it's like I'm fighting for that. Maybe it is a selfish thing, but it's not, like, because I know you get lonely too sometimes, maybe, or you just get so zoned into your work and life and the busyness that like it's a good combination that we have of like a solution that's a combination of like it helps you break out of the mold and it helps me feel very connected. And
Yeah.
that connection, I think, is what helps me the most when I'm it sounds so basic, but it's just the intention of it. It's not just like we're on our phones watching a show. Like let's go to a breakfast this morning, just take an extra 15 minutes to just sit and look at each other and talk,
Well, you've
So
invited me into the loneliness, like over times. Like you'll tell me now, or like, hey, I'm feeling susceptible. Hey, I'm feeling lonely. And that helps me. Like it helps me understand the patterns. It helps me see it. Or like you talk about two of us connecting. That was a moment of conflict for a while. I remember your one of your first tours, I was like, can you call me FaceTime? And you're like, nope, like we're on the road. It's really intense. I really want to focus and do a good job.
Sound check, gotta load in.
Yeah, but I was
there was
like,
a lot of work, but
I really wanted to respect that. And then one time I came to visit you on tour, and then Carlos was on stage FaceTiming his family and holding his mic talking. And I thought, my first thought was, that is so unprofessional. And then the second thought was, and I am so jealous. I would love it if Aaron was unprofessional for me and needed to call me so bad. He did it like during a sound check on stage. And I told you that. And I was like, hey, if he can do it, I really need you to do that, because I'm feeling disconnected. And I remember our counselor was like, what are practical ways? He goes, Aaron, my challenge to you is to send Haven a picture of your lunch every day and tell her what you ate for lunch, because that's a natural prompting. It can then make me feel engaged to what you're doing.
I forgot about that, and I subconsciously do that now.
Yes.
Like if I'm somewhere and I'm doing something fun, I'm like, Haven needs to know about this. It helps me break out of my mold or whatever.
Yes, it's little practical
habit.
ways of like, not only just am I acknowledging this, I'm bringing it to you, but what are we going to do about it? Like, what can we do to kind of get some like more connections or break
Just
the
ways
mold?
to say, like, I'm thinking about you.
Mm-hmm.
I have you on my mind and on my heart, as I'm chowing down on this delicious
Chowing down
lunch.
But even to your point of like, I go to bed at 8 because I wake up at like 5 to work out every morning. So I get really tired by the end of the night. But you're a night owl. And so that also has been conflict instead of, well, that is what it is. Like, I've given you permission. You can wake me up for some fun. And that's actually been some of the best things that we've instated, because then it's like, this is great. I still get to go to bed. If you need some connection, wake me up. Good for that. And then going back to bed. But it's like, it doesn't just have to be like, well, I'm a early to bed. You stay up late. Too bad for us. Too bad for you. Like, what
Miss
are
the window?
Miss the window. Like, what are the solutions? Where can we just like color outside the lines?
That's the like creativity of marriage that I think is really important, and it's gone from like our journey so far. We were in the beginning. I did a lot of therapy before we got married. Like I'd never gone to therapy through all the crazy stuff I'd experienced in my life, the loss of my mom, extreme depression, dealing with drugs, just a lot of chaotic things in my upbringing. Your mom, when we started talking about, I really love Haven and I think I want to marry her. And she was like, well, if you're thinking about it, you should do like a full year of counseling on your own. Talk about all your issues, because we all have issues. Talk about your issues with the counselor, and then,
then decide.
Then decide.
Yeah.
And that brought up a lot of things. And there were a lot of things that, okay, yeah, we need to set some good boundaries for each other and for other people, no third parties, or we had a lot of structure in the beginning of our marriage because we wanted to make it really strong, right? And the beginning of a marriage is so like fun and joyful, but we also wanted to have like some things that would lead us like through the long haul, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're 60, we can reap the benefits of what we did when we were 20. Mm-hmm. I say all that to say, we did all the structural work in the beginning of our marriage. Now, like 11 years in, we're really reaping the benefits of the creativity side. Like we can deeply dream about like what we want to do and build that. And I think kids have helped that a lot too. Like kids take a lot of work, but they brought something into our relationship where, I don't know, we're just a little bit more off the cuff. Like we're a little more spontaneous, a little more, it's just in general, our marriage lately, I see the things that we're like building and creating rather than preventative care
Hmm.
stuff. You know,
Yeah.
it's a contrast between building a wall or building a staircase. You know, like it's a lot of work either way, but the focus has now been like, oh, now what can we like actually create together instead of safeguard together?
Yeah, I think initially it was these structures, which, as you mentioned, like for us, no third party. It's just me and you. And porn involved is covered in the third party. We
Yeah.
don't involve that at all in our relationship. And then it's also like shared phones of that came up because I remember seeing something on your phone I wasn't comfortable with, and it caused a lot of pain, and we
Yeah.
talked about it. And so it's, hey, full access if I'm not comfortable with Haven having availability and connection to this, and it's probably not something to do. And so I feel like it was these like very important cornerstones of like to build the foundation on. But now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, those are there. Like, what are we going to do to enjoy it? How can we explore one another more? How can we have more creativity? Something's going to change and sideswipe us, you know? How do we get our bearings and deal with that together too? I feel like it is the evolution of marriage over time of it gets better and better and better. And that's because it takes like intentional work. Sometimes I think of our marriage as like a garden of like, yes, I want boundaries around it. I want to be aware of what's going there. And I want to nourish and cultivate and put all my energy there. Sometimes it's like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side. But if you don't know how to garden, you're going to go over there and you're going to kill that too. Like,
Oh, for sure.
why not take care of what's in your hand and do it in the best like possible? And I think of now we're in the stage of like, it's so important to dream, and we're dreaming. Like, what if we plant a lemon tree here? And then, oh, wonderful. Like, we could have like the kids sell lemonade and we can drink it on the porch when we're old. Like, not only is the importance to safeguard the garden, but it's also to make this our area of play and our area of sacredness, and also dreaming about the landscape together. It's not just how do I keep things out? It's what do we want to do with this? What do we want to bring here together? And I think marriage is a collaboration. Marriage is us together working towards something as a common goal.
What would you say to someone who maybe has just gone through an affair or been cheated on and is now trying to maybe work their way toward forgiving or finding some resolution?
Well, first thing I'd say is I'm so sorry. It sounds like one of the worst things that could ever happen. Someone that you trust and you love betraying you in that way. Like, that's just got to rip you to shreds. And so I would acknowledge that, like, no matter whatever direction you're going to go, like, there's deep, deep, deep pain and grief and continual grief that would need to be acknowledged. I would, of course, encourage them to go to a professional counselor. For us, I always like that our counselor is faith-based because I feel like there's a huge element of hope. I've seen some other therapists before, and I think they're incredible ones. I just like the anchoring of something bigger than myself. Like, that is important to me. I can't find it all from within. So I would recommend talking to someone, maybe going to an offsite. There's amazing areas to really, like, this is a deep wound that needs to be cleaned out, protected, reset properly. And most people wouldn't have the tools to know how to do that. And then I heard this one quote that says, like, if that happens and if you continue to try and make it work with your spouse, your old marriage is dead. There's no rebuilding in like, let's go back to what we were, let's do this, because everything in your memory from them is like tainted and a lie, and wondering, were you thinking about them? Were you doing that? Like, we're going to start a new marriage. And this is a new marriage. Because your question is if they want to learn like to forgive or work it, then they have to be like, this is a new thing. What was before has to be dead. And then I think their spouse would have to be willing to do the work and to be able to get in the ring and take the punches of, you hurt me, you betrayed me, I can't believe you did that, and not step out of the ring. Like, they have to stand there and take it, because you may have had your affair for however long and you've processed, you were prepared. This is entirely new information to someone. They have to process it over and over, and there's going to be a lot of hurt and a lot of talking. And especially if you instigated it, you have to be the one prepared to take it on the chin, take ownership, not get defensive, and do your own work of what caused you to do that. What was your own brokenness? What was unaddressed that you let lay dormant? What was pushed aside? And it takes two people with severe work to make it happen. But I do believe there's hope and it can.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's possible. And again, like, faith is so big to us. Like, I believe that God can redeem. I believe he forgives us. Like, I think there is so much power in that. And it's going to take a long journey to get there.
That's really beautiful. And for a lot of people maybe going through that situation, you think like, maybe it's like, why me a little bit? I think it's important to know that like this can happen to everyone, not in the fear mongering way, but like we have choice. We can choose what we want to do. Sometimes we make emotional choices. Sometimes we make choices out of our brokenness, and that leads to some more brokenness and destruction of something that we cherish. You don't want to imagine that it can't happen to you, because then maybe you can live blissfully in that, and that's wonderful. But I think you still have to have boundaries. It's like the thing, I feel like we always talk about this. There's a study of when the kids are playing in a playground, when there's no fence, they just stay really close to the center. But when there's a fence, when there's a good boundary around, they can take over the whole space. Like, they're running to the edge and they know there's a boundary there. They know they're safe. They know they're protected. I think there's that blissfulness in marriage that you can harness or rekindle or whatever you might call it, like tap into when you have a good solid boundary, because then I can live my life and I know that you're not going to betray me. I trust you, you know? And it's not even that I know you're not going to betray me. It's that I trust you so much. I'm, in fact, creating a strong foundation of trust while we have the boundaries around us in our marriage. I think that's a beautiful way to go about it.
You brought the point of like, why me? I think it's a good, I can understand that starting out point, but I think it's also, if you're the one being cheated on, and it's usually not about you. It's usually their brokenness coming up. Like, someone's like, we had a great marriage, or I felt connected, or we were still having sex. Like, what happened? It's about the other person's brokenness they have to be willing to address.
Absolutely.
So going into our own offense, like all the defense, that's great to have the protection around it. What does it look like to have a romance with your spouse, to be caught up in this emotional whirlwind with the person you married? Like, how do we have those same experiences, but with one another? It makes me think of one thing that we tried in college that actually didn't work. Do you know?
Oh, can I please tell this story?
Okay, if I can supplement my point of view.
Please. Can I tell the story first?
Yes.
Okay. So Haven and I went to the same college. And when you're in college, there's some like classes you have to take, like core electives that everybody has to do regardless of what your degree is. We had to do a science one. And so we're like, we should take the same class and just be in the class together. We're like, okay, great. What class do you want to do? You know, geology seems fun. I don't know why. And so we picked the same class. And then I think maybe the week of, we're like, what if we like pretended we didn't know each other?
Yeah, we had been together for 3 years, but I was like, okay, you know how in classes, like, even if you don't talk to everyone, you observe and you're like, oh, they keep sitting next to each other. Or
you see the romance unfold.
You see it unfold. And we're like, let's pretend. And week by week, we'll progressively have like new things to our backstory. Like, we won't sit near each other at first. No interaction. We don't know each other.
First few weeks, really weird. We didn't know each other. We were just, and there wasn't even any chance of interaction. So we were just in class and we'd leave separately and eventually like hang out again.
It was a long game for the plot.
Then a few weeks into it, or maybe a month into it even, there was like, we had a conversation, or like, can I borrow a pencil? It was something like that. Something super.
We prepared our first meet cute.
Innocent. Yeah. Oh, wow. And then they would progressively, you know, the weeks to come. It was a once a week class too. So that progressively would get more and more connected.
Like, you would sit next to me and then we would chat more.
Yes. Yes. And it was a lab. So it was like a geology lab. So we were like really like hands-on.
Sharing a microscope.
Yeah. Like, oh, wow. But then there was some time we misfired and it was like,
our wires got crossed.
I was like, okay, I think we just got busy or something. We're like, okay, where are we at in the relationship today? She was like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, oh, okay, how about this? Like we went out to coffee, right? And then I was like, she said, yeah, that sounds great. So we go into the class and then I'm talking to Haven and like we had just gone out to coffee like that week.
In our made up backstory.
Yes, fictional coffee had occurred. Probably had some good conversation at that coffee shop, right?
Really hit it off.
Then Haven, in front of everyone, proceeds to say, "What's your name again?" And I'm like,
I forgot where we were. I set us back.
We had already gotten coffee, and you don't even remember my name?
No.
I was about to call it off.
Ugh.
Can you imagine a breakup? What's more exciting to see? No.
That would have been more dramatic and interesting.
But so eventually we did, at the end of the class, I proposed. No, I'm just kidding. But that would have been awesome. But we continued. It was a good thing. And it was for no one's benefit.
No one's entertainment.
Probably no one even knew.
I don't think anyone noticed. It was just between us. We just
because
thought it
as we all know, I don't know how to flirt.
No.
So
it was so entertaining for us though, because we're like, where are we this week? Like, what's the status? Are we sitting next to each other? So the whole semester, we were wildly entertained. And I would say to this day, no one in class would have been the wiser. They don't know anything.
That's one way to make a really boring class really fun.
Mm-hmm. But I would say that like having so much fun and playfulness in your relationship, I think that about you too is like we have so many inside jokes where I can just say one word or give you a look and like we're in step, lock in step, which I think is also such a fun offense thing of like we have so many secrets with us. Or like even like in intimate moments we're like, wow, like no one else ever sees this side of us except for you. And it feels so fun to play and like to advance together and like explore and do things. Like I think that's also part of it is having fun as a couple and keeping things in this private like little window together.
So you're saying you're gonna match my freak?
Deep cut for someone who doesn't know what that means listening.
Well,
I wouldn't tell them to Google it. It's just a song. It's a trend on TikTok.
So that was like a really specific example, but I think that just who you are and how I relate to you, I think it's nice to have a routine, like a set, like a you know it's coming, like you love to plan so much, and I enjoy planning too, but you really love it. And so
really gets me going.
Having like, let's just talk about our day really quick. Like that, like gets you like so excited because it feels like we're in the same world together.
I know that I can tell when you want to have sex because you're like, tell me about your day. And it does it for me. I'm like, this is
what's the plan Friday morning?
But it's like the follow-up questions where I feel seen, I feel acknowledged, I feel like you care, and then my emotional bucket's full.
It's not that I just want to connect to you, and then wow.
It always ends up that way.
Okay. Well, I brought that up just because typically we're very intentional about having a time together. Like typically Friday nights we have our date night. And for you and for me, it's both of us, but I know for you specifically being such a planner, being able to look forward to that, it gives you like, at least no matter how hard the week is, no matter what's going on, we're going to do something fun. And that's just, it's like law now. Like you can't break it. Like Friday is that. And
it's the anchor for my week. That's for sure.
An anchor is a good way to say it, not the law. Just something that grounds you, gets you like, it really works well for us in our marriage to have like a consistency, especially now having kids and so many things are demanding our attention, to have some time to do that. So having routine is good, but then on my side, I love the spontaneity thing of like, I'll drop you off at the office, but first we're gonna go here. Like you don't have a call till 9:30 or something like that. Like, let's just sneak away for a little bit and have a little moment, even if it's just for 30 minutes, like a little coffee or something, a little breakfast. Like, just the combination of the repetition and the spontaneous, I think, helps.
I love it. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
I don't think there's anything else to add on here. I feel like we really overturned every rock on this topic. Is there anything we missed?
No, I think we covered a whole lot, and it's a heavy topic too. It's a heavy thing to think about if you've gone through it. It's just gut wrenching, right? Mm-hmm. But there is a way forward to just forgiveness or a better life, or there's more ahead. And if you are in the middle of a marriage right now and there's temptation or whatever it might be, like, fight for creating a beautiful marriage with who you are with, like who you chose. Like, why did you even go in this route in the first place? Find that and celebrate it, love it, nurture it, cherish it. It's a really beautiful thing. And we've did so much work in the beginning to really understand ourselves, like the marriage back and forth, that's one thing, but like it a lot of what it did is I began to understand more of me, my brokenness, my pattern recognition went like way off the charts, or like, this is why I'm doing this. Like, I just feel this way, and it's stemming from this. And my depression is stemming from feeling lonely. And that's like the whole HALT, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Like, if you're beginning to feel any of those things, just stop. Like, halt. If you're feeling hungry, get something to eat. If you're feeling angry, just take a deep breath and count to 4. Or lonely, like, share that with your spouse. Even if you're angry, sharing that with your partner really makes a difference. If you're tired, like, and there's a lot of things demanding on you, like, I would say, yeah, just take a nap. But if you're tired, ask for help. Like, can you help cover this with the kids? Well, I can just take like 20-minute nap or whatever it is, and see that make an impact in how you're feeling in those moments.
That's a beautiful capstone to the topic.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Captain. Capstone.
Okay. Thank you guys for listening. I know it is, like, we had some humor in it, but it is a heavy topic. I think also, if you're in that position, one piece of advice I heard was borrow from the pain of the future. Think about this action and all of the pain that would come from it. Feel that pain and then decide what you're going to do. So I think also of it's defensive, it's offensive, but also think about everyone else that's affected in these scenarios, because that matters too. We're all connected, and there's ripple effects, there's shrapnel, there's aftercare that would need to happen for multiple people if a decision like that is made. And get some help. There's help out there, and there are professionals who can talk through these kind of issues too. But thank you for listening. You can like, review, subscribe on wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can also go to havenpod.com and sign up for my email newsletter. I give you updates about the book club, future live speaking events, and other fun goodies like merch drops that go early there. So sign up, and we will talk next time.